All right, I think we're rolling. So welcome to the first Other League pod of the 2024 season. Gio, it's awesome to be back with you. I'm super pumped to be here and having time to be able to record. Um, yeah, man. How are things? How does it feel to get back behind the mic and kick off a new year?
Yeah, man, it's exciting. It's been a long time coming. I know we've had a few weeks that we've kind of talked throughout, maybe like lead up to draft day and maybe like post draft that we really wanted to try to get something out. But yeah, life is life, right? I mean, just hard to coordinate schedules, and then traveling now and now, but we're back on board.
Hmm.
Hopefully to kind of do this on a weekly basis. I know we were getting some jabs from the commish, but I'm sure he'll be excited to see this tomorrow when we post it. So good to
Yeah.
be back.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think this year if we kind of get things a little honed in, it might be a little bit easier, kind of keep it a little bit shorter. I know a few times it went on for close to 2 hours and
Yeah, it's
got to
insane.
become got to become a little bit to even just to like watch back for the guys in the league. It was an investment. So yeah, I think we can be a little bit more efficient, kind of keep things rolling and keep things you know, uh informative and give our some takes that we have because I know I've been having takes in the holster for since draft
All
day.
right,
But cool. Yeah,
love it.
let's get rolling. So the way we're gonna do it tonight, we're just gonna start with going over the league, kind of running through some standings, outlooks on teams. Have to touch on the injury situation that's affecting everybody.
Seriously.
And then so let me share my screen. I'll get to the league page and then um we'll just roll through the standings, kind of see where everything sits. So as of now, through 2 weeks, there are four 2-0 teams, four 0-2 teams, and then four teams right in the middle at 1-1. So kicking it off with Andy. I want to say first off, Andy and Logan, I don't have anything to go off of. It just always feels like they're always at the top
It's
right from the
crazy.
start with high point totals. And I don't know why that is. They're always the two managers also that seem to go off of the consensus sort of way that you should draft, where you take certain
True.
players, ADP be damned. I think Andy took two tight ends in the first 7 rounds, which would always be sort of frowned upon, one of which is out for a couple weeks, one of which didn't play last week, and yet he still
Hmm.
puts up big totals. So let's go into Andy's team first and then we'll touch on Logue. So the last 2 weeks for Andy, obviously he had wins. Let me try to go back. So we'll just start with week one. So week one, obviously put up a total of 137. Anytime you're above 130, you have a real good chance to win. Um, Yeah, I mean, any immediate takeaways for Andy's team? It's Evan Ingram obviously with the 1.5, but
Yeah, he's just
his team overall just looks really solid. He's got you know with Brees and Achan. I mean,
great.
it's great, and Achan now is getting way more work. I think for me, one of the reasons why I drafted Raheem Mostert was I thought it would be more of a split. It hasn't been more of a split. Achan has gotten as much as he can handle, and he's a stud. So yeah, give your some takeaways on Andy's team and kind of what his outlook looks like
Yeah,
from
I
the
mean,
past 2 weeks.
I've had some text exchanges with Andy over the last few days. We'll say, just especially today, he outbid me just based off of waiver priority for some P Ryan. So he was jabbing me a little bit for that earlier
Hmm.
this morning. But I was just like kind of looking at his team while we are texting earlier today, and I mean super top heavy. Obviously, I mean his bench is pretty much non-existent. Like you mentioned, I mean definitely kind of an unorthodox way of drafting for sure. But his starting lineup's really powerful. Like you mentioned, I mean Brees Hall and Echan's been an absolute animal for the first 2 weeks. I mean, Debo going down, we'll see how long that goes out for. But I mean, overall, I mean, Adams had a hell of a game at the end of that week 2 matchup against Baltimore. That was crazy. And Rashee Rice has just been unbelievable. I mean, the guy's back to back basically 18-point weeks. I mean, that's a number one receiver that he has on arguably one of the best offenses still, even though Mahomes kind of looks somewhat human to start the year. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, yeah, Andy just finds ways to put up points. I mean, he's 137 week 1, and I had a decent outing, obviously, in week 2. I mean, it was got to be close to that same point total. He's got 284 for the year. Yeah, he's
147 week 2.
yeah, crazy. Yeah. So I mean, anything we always say that 125, 130 mark, like you mentioned earlier. I mean, that's a sweet spot. You're gonna have a tough time beating a guy that scores that many points. So and I want to thank Steve here for telling him if you didn't know already about the Evan Ingram injury. Got the plug in Zach Ertz and threw a little 10 spot up for the guy. So, but yeah, it's Andy again has a competitive team for sure. I mean, it's early, but we'll see how healthy he'll stay. Obviously, he just lost Debo for a few weeks, so he doesn't have a lot of room for error on his bench, which none of us really honestly do in terms of depth. But he's certainly top heavy, so we'll see. He's got to stay healthy, but he's got a real good team.
I agree. Outlook moving forward. I mean, he's pretty much locking in everyone. Like you said, we'll see what happens with Debo. The big thing is the one thing, and I was very down on him in the whole pre-draft process, but Devontae Adams, currently on the Raiders, probably one of the biggest surprise teams so far. There's actually, I saw a stat, they're actually second in the league in pass rate. Like the amount of times they just throw the ball. Gardner Minshew is actually first in completion percentage. So
Yeah,
pretty much a
crazy.
surprise. I think everyone kind of assumed they would be like a doormat, but Devontae Adams, I mean, coming back, he's got 12 targets again in week 2. Like, Jaden Daniels is pretty much Washington's entire offense. And,
Mhm.
he's always going to have that rushing floor. It's pretty insane to watch him play because he's like Wile E. Coyote running into a brick wall. But I think having Brees, Achan, Rice, and Adams is such a solid four that I think can really carry him most weeks. Especially when he drafted Rashee Rice in round 4, which I was aiming him in round 5. Thought I would get him, especially when the suspension probably wasn't going to happen this year. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Andy each year just always is in the thick of it. Let's move on to Logue, who's currently in second, 2-0, second in points. Um, week 1, um, put out 148. I think he was the league high that week.
Yeah,
Um,
top scorer.
yeah, and I mean, starting Antonio Gibson, like my goodness, and just to have that, I mean, similar to Andy in drafting a player that I was sort of fading, I was very off of Alvin Kamara. I think that's probably one of the biggest stories in the NFL right now is the Saints turnaround. And what they've done, they've just been like a buzzsaw on offense. But
Seriously.
having, we'll see what's going to happen with Tyreek now that Tua is injured. But having the stack with Stroud and Diggs, Kamara obviously is, I think, the fantasy RB1 right now after the 44-point week. And then
Definitely.
Brock Bowers, my goodness, he might be the best tight end in the NFL right now.
He's crazy.
So, and even having Christian Kirk be an absolute, basically a zero, as a keeper, I think his team, similar to Andy, he's got a questionable bench in
Hmm.
terms of guys who can plug in, but his starting lineup's pretty locked in each week. So, thoughts on Logan's team kind of moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I loved his receivers, obviously, in the draft process, and then he was really excited to do that Diggs Stroud stack. I remember that at the draft. So I mean, that was yeah, great play. I mean, we'll get to your team, but I mean, Nico Collins is still, I think, the head and shoulders one in Houston, but yeah, Diggs is the two for sure, I think, and just in terms of scores, I mean, we saw what he did in week 1. Just catching a couple balls, but a couple tutties. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see again. His RB2 is questionable, right? I mean, Kamara's just been Kamara. I mean, you every year I think, oh, this guy can't do it, and now they look even better somehow on offense. And
Yeah, he's
he's
ageless.
he's
He's ageless, man.
he's
It's
their total
nuts.
offense too. It's insane. The guy's unbelievable. Really fun to watch. I love Alvin Kamara.
I don't
Um,
think there's any player who has a better drip than
yeah,
and like look in his uniform than Kamara with he's got the grill, he's got the dark visor,
yeah,
he's number 41. He just
yeah.
looks so sick.
Yeah, I mean, and then hitting on Brock Bowers is huge. I mean, the tight end as a whole has just been an absolute. I mean, barren wasteland, really, of even on the talented side of guys that you draft, early, just not having production. So the fact that you get Brock Bowers and the target share that he's been having, like you said, in that pass heavy offense, I mean, it's he hits on that. I mean, again, the RB2 is going to be the biggest weakness. I mean, he's definitely hoping maybe Chubb comes back and is a shell of himself, but still enough to be a plug and play guy on a weekly basis. He's definitely grasping at straws with some other guys that hopefully will, Alexander Madison's, I know he's got a couple plug guys like Trey Benson. I think he just picked up somebody else. Foreman, I want to say. Yeah, Foreman he picked up on
He
waivers
just got
this
Deonta
morning.
Foreman. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. So he's quite a there you go. If Edwards Hilaire is
This
even relevant. So um those are two guys he picked up, just kind of plug him on your bench and let's see what happens, right? So
yeah.
his RB2 spot's really the only bad, weak spot that you can kind of point out on his team. But if Kamara's putting up 20 to 40 a week, because you don't really need a second RB. And
Yeah.
we comment on the rest of his squad. So yeah, he's got another tough team that's going to be definitely in contention again. I mean, it's Logan's had a few of these over the years, so we'll see. But he's got really steady all the way around in terms of his starting lineup. Just that RB2 spot is really, um, could make or break in terms of just being a top, one team. We'll say in terms of
Hmm.
no holes at all. So yeah, he's got a
Yeah.
great team.
Yeah, I think we'll see what happens with Tyreek and Skylar Thompson as the quarterback now. Kind of takes a
Sure.
little bit of shine, kind of takes a little bit of shine off of his top heaviness, but with Kamara, he's got Stroud and Diggs. I think Diggs' production is kind of going to be a little bit fluctuated each week and pretty touchdown dependent. Because
Mhm.
I think all him and Tank Dell are both getting similar target shares. I know, Nico Collins is the surefire alpha there, but um, I think it might be a little bit touchdown dependent with Diggs, but when you have Stroud playing as well as he is right now, um, you know, Diggs is a locked in starter every week. So, um,
Yeah,
let's go to the third team, who is 2-0. That is Steve. Um,
unbelievable.
Steve, I will say the Marvin Harrison pick, I think I mocked him taking him in the second round. I didn't anticipate him taking him in the first, especially over Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
But now that looks like a really good pick. Um, I mean, we heard everything about Marvin Harrison coming out of the draft. He was, he didn't do anything at the combine. So, and then after week one, everyone was concerned about how fast he is. And I don't think he's like necessarily a burner, but he he just reminds me so much of like a DeAndre Hopkins type player, and where he's just going to catch everything. And I think having him as a one with, in that offense, like their offense is fun. And if you watch them play, they're going to score a lot of points. Um, Kyron, well, let me get your thoughts on Steve's team because I have some thoughts on his team kind of moving forward. I think
All right.
we start to get into a little bit of shakiness with some players just on team outlooks. Kyron's
Sure.
obviously a baller when he's on the field, but let me get your takes on Steve's team and then we'll kind of
Yeah.
I'll say mine.
Yeah, I mean Steve's got a good team. I think there's a reason that those three teams that we're talking about here are the three top teams in terms of obviously undefeated, for the first 2 weeks, and just the point totals that these guys are putting up. I mean that Josh Allen didn't even really need to be playing really necessarily after James Cook scored all those touchdowns last week. So I mean, yeah, he didn't even get a good total out of Josh Allen. And then the rest of his team obviously were still putting up some points. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. finally showed. I didn't think that was. I thought that was what we're going to get out of him. Honestly, I mean, I didn't think the two touchdowns and whatever he had in the first. I think it was the first quarter or the first half. He had a ridiculous stat line. Um,
Yeah.
but he's the number one there in an offense that's chucking it, and Murray looks awesome. So I mean, that offense is going to be humming if those guys are playing like they are, early in the year. So George Pickens, I don't know. I mean, I got to look at George Pickens stats myself because I can't imagine they're 13 in the first week. Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine they were doing anything. They haven't scored I don't think they scored a touchdown as a team.
Week
Or
one they
maybe
didn't.
one.
They
Oh, they
have
scored. They
they
scored one
scored
last
one
week.
touchdown. It was Darnell
Yeah,
Washington last week.
correct. Yep, I forgot. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I mean, Pittsburgh finding ways to win, but certainly not helping out the fantasy owners by any means in
Yeah.
terms of production. I know you
I will
stopped at
say,
Kyron.
yeah, I was sorry to I just cut you off, but
Go ahead,
I will
go ahead,
say
go ahead.
about Pickens, I feel like we can kind of just give our takes now kind of simultaneously. I will
Go
say
ahead.
about Pickens, Pickens is awesome. Like I last year I was kind of like, he's a little overrated, but like watching him play, and just like what he does to corners, like he's a really good player. I just think playing with Justin Fields, it's going to be really hit or miss, and they're super run heavy. So, probably a little bit volatile production, but I think, especially like looking at like week 4 in Indianapolis, like I think that could be an eruption spot for Pickens.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love the guy's game. I just, again, seeing how they're structured right now in terms of how they're winning games, and they're kind of game managing with Justin Fields. I don't know if they're gonna like essentially just like, hey, why don't you just go start chucking it? I don't
Yeah,
know. I mean, maybe they open it up. I do think if they're winning, they're not going to take Justin Fields out. They have no reason to. So,
right.
um, let the defense kind of grind and they put up points how they do. But I do love George Pickens as a player for sure. Kyron, like you said, dude, everyone on the Rams is banged up, so I don't know what his outlook's going to be here in the next at least
Yeah.
4 to 6 weeks. I don't know. And they're already throwing out rumors of like trading Stafford. At least the news outlets are, which I think it's hilarious. It's 2 weeks
It's
in.
hilarious
Uh,
and nonsensical,
yeah,
in my opinion.
no, I agree with you. It's silly, but
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
unfortunately they've been hit with the injury bug probably the hardest in terms of a team wise. I mean, their offensive line is decimated.
Yeah.
Both the receivers are hurt now. I mean, it's gonna be tough for Kyron really to see some lanes, I think, and they get the Niners this week. So,
Yeah.
um, tough. Jameer Gibbs is still split in the backfield, but I love him. I think he's a really good player. He's electric when he gets the ball. George Kittle's been great, and then I mean, really what? Who would have thought J.K. Dobbins would be doing what he's doing? He's been
Insane.
incredible. I mean, they were going to run the rock, the Chargers for sure with Harbaugh, but J.K. Dobbins, man, geez, the guy is going off. I mean,
He
it's
looks
crazy
good.
to watch. Yeah, he does.
He looks really good. It's crazy to see. And like, it's really hard not to root for Dobbins with all the injuries he's had. He was so good, coming out of Ohio State, and he was really good when he was healthy in Baltimore. And then like seeing him, what he's doing with the Chargers, like, man, he doesn't have the long speed that he did before, probably because of the injuries, but like watching him in that offense, if he's healthy for the duration of the year, he's going to be like a top 10 running back.
Yeah,
He's I think he's averaging like 9 yards a carry now, which is insane. But so that probably will regress a little bit. But I mean, Dobbins has always been like a 5 to 6 yard per carry player throughout his career. So like he's already like one of the biggest draft steals, um,
easily.
of the year so far. So I
Yeah,
mean, having those three backs, I think locked in kind of gives Steve a pretty stable floor. And then anytime you have Josh Allen, like
yeah, stop.
he's second best quarterback in the league. So yeah, I mean, looking at the rest, and I do like Rico Dowdle. I think he's going to start the more the year goes on. I think he's going to start to get more work, and then having Braylon Allen as probably one of the best pure handcuffs in fantasy. I think Steve at least is set up pretty well. He may have to make a trade for
He's got
with one
Jaden
of those
Reed too.
guys. Yeah, and Jaden Reed, when I think when Love comes back,
Which could be this week.
he's gonna smash again. So yeah, so
Yeah,
we'll see.
that
But I
J.K.
mean,
That J.K. Dobbins take, like you said, though, I mean, that for sure right now looks like, I mean, he's the number three fantasy receiver or running back. I mean, it's only 2 weeks, small sample size, but hey, back to back 20-point weeks. I mean, hey,
yeah,
can't hate that with a guy you probably just, late in the draft threw on your team just to say, hey, maybe it's got to be somebody out there. So
Yeah, and you're
interesting.
starting to, and you're really, yeah, and you're really starting to see like them lean on Dobbins a little more. I know Gus Edwards is still going to get a lot of carries. I don't think Dobbins is ever going to get like 20 plus carries. But getting up to like 17, he had 10 week one. I think they're going to start to really lean into giving Dobbins maybe the lion's share work. Like I said, I don't think Gus Edwards is going to go away, but I mean Dobbins is he's just going to be he should be locked into Steve's lineup every week.
Great.
Um, then moving to the last undefeated team, it
Luckiest,
is
luckiest guy in the
Arby's.
league.
Total points 203.
Points
So
against
what is his
one
points
six,
against?
like 160 or something. It's
Is that
ridiculous.
the lowest? Is that the lowest in the
It's
league?
gotta be. Oh, there it is,
One
166.
166. That is the lowest by 30. So a little bit of fortune in there.
Not a bad
And
team though.
you no, I do like his team. His RB2 spot is a
Again,
little
lacking.
shaky. I mean, I know Zach Moss is probably his best bet, but we'll see what Zamir White can do this week. I mean, I know he's playing White this week
Yep.
against Carolina, who's just they're
Jesus.
a run funnel, so and a pass funnel. They're
They're
one of the
terrible.
worst defenses I've ever seen. But I mean, Hurts, Amon Ra, Higgins, if he plays,
Mhm.
Walker, if he plays, he does have Charbonnet that he can sub in.
Yep.
And then and then the $41 bid on Toby
Insane.
Gerhart 2.0. He's been hanging on, man. I like Ben's team kind of coming out of the draft. Amon Ra has been, he had 19 targets last week, but
Went off.
Laporta has been, you know,
Hmm.
I think with Jamison Williams kind of emerging there, maybe Laporta gets siphoned a little bit. I think he'll start to get his as it kind of rounds out. But yeah, I like Ben's team. I think it's a little bit more volatile than the record would show, though.
Yeah, I mean, great. I mean, all the points that you just said, I think are the reasons why his team, out of the four 2-0 teams, I think there was four of them. His just seems to be the most the weakest, I should say, in terms of its depth. I mean, he is facing some injuries again. I mean, Cooper Kupp's that first week looked amazing. So that sucks. I mean, I, he's a reason why I don't think a lot of guys wanted to take a chance with him in terms of the draft. I think he slid a little bit more than I anticipated. Hearing good things out of him. I mean, the injury bug was just kind of looming over him from last year, I think, still. So we'll see with him. I mean, they're saying it might be a multi-week, type of injury, but you add that into like that RB kind of carousel that he's playing outside of, I guess Walker when he's healthy. We'll see. I mean, again, I think Laporta is still a solid top five tight end. I mean, he's going to get it going, and Detroit's offense hasn't looked bad. They're moving the ball. To your point, I would think there's just a lot of mouths to feed on that offense. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens with
Hmm.
some of those RBs. I mean, Zach Moss, Amir White. I mean, he needs one of those guys to kind of steady the ship a little bit. He does have Chase Brown. And to your point, he has the handcuff obviously for Walker if he doesn't come back. So I
Hmm.
mean, he's got guys. He needs a couple of those guys to kind of remain consistent for him, at least in the RB committee.
Yeah, and with Cooper Cup, the good news is they didn't put him on IR.
Correct.
Though I was reading with Cup, I don't know if not putting him on IR means he's not going to be out for the 4 weeks. There's just only so many spots that you can dedicate to like having a player go on IR that you're going to bring back, and
Yep.
they're already reserving a few of those spots for some offensive linemen, I believe. And I know one thing about Zach Moss, he is playing like 70% of the snaps. So it's not really like a committee, like I think a lot of people thought coming in the draft. Like Moss is firmly the
Mm-hmm.
entrenched starter there. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what Ben can get out of Carson Steele. I don't know. It'll be
Be
fun.
interesting to see.
He's an undrafted free agent who's white and 245. So we'll see.
I'm rooting for him.
Um,
I'm rooting for
yeah, it's fun. It's fun, and
him.
he did look good in that a couple plays that he had in the preseason. So, I think a lot of the 1-on-1 teams we can kind of group together.
Sure.
Let's hit on
Yeah.
your team.
I'll go for it.
254. Yeah,
Yep.
254 total points. I mean, obviously losing Jordan Love. hurts,
Pacheco
but
now.
you got and Pacheco probably for the entire year. But um, with Baker, I think you can steady the ship. Baker's looked awesome.
Yeah.
Obviously Justin Jefferson is the best receiver on the planet. Zay Flowers has like firmly established himself as like the wide receiver one there and is like a really solid every week wide receiver too. James Cook looks awesome. And now he's getting red zone work, which was a big question
Thank
mark kind
God.
of moving into this year from last year. I think he has like 4 red zone carries already in 2 weeks, and he had like two last year or something like that. So if he starts getting touchdowns like he did last week, like he's going to be an easy RB1 moving forward. And then, rounding it out, Swift looks bad.
Yeah, Chicago looks
um,
terrible.
yeah, but we'll see. I know at least DeAndre Swift is playing. He's playing a ton, and he's definitely the entrenched starter there. Kincaid has been a little disappointing, and then London, I think, will start rounding out
Yeah.
once Cousins gets a little bit more healthy. So, what are your thoughts on your team as you kind of move forward?
Yeah, I mean, the Pacheco injury sucked because that it came so late in the game. Like, and he's been the workhorse in that offense for the last, we'll say all of last year. I mean, taking over three down work too. He's not just the bruiser for the first two downs. He's getting that third down work, which was awesome to see. I mean, that's why I kept him. But so that's gonna be a tough one to kind of hope that I can plug and play. I mean, like I said, Swift is the guy, but they've looked so bad offensive line. Like their offensive line in Chicago has been so bad. I mean, Caleb Williams has no time to throw, which I love seeing as a Packers fan, but as a fantasy owner of a guy that I got to play now, it's not great.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I like my team. I mean, Love. I played Stafford last week. Didn't need him, thankfully, against you. But Baker, I'm very comfortable with. He's been great. In the interim, that Jordan Love has another week or two for sure, probably. Jefferson hopefully got away with just a quad contusion. It looks like so that was kind of nice to see that he's at least went through walkthroughs today. Yeah, Zay Flowers, like you said, has been good. James Cook's been awesome. He's only had two rushing touchdowns each of his first two seasons each year, and he had two last week. So, to your point, that's certainly nice to see. I think Kincaid will still be something. I mean, they got to throw it to somebody if they're going to throw it. So I think he'll probably be a steady tight end. I mean, there's not really much else out there. And it was nice to see Drake London scoring. So I think my starting lineup, it looks pretty solid. I got a couple guys on my bench. The saga of Ray Davis has finally just subsided. He's back on the Greenville Packers. Spent a couple dollars dropping him and spent a couple dollars picking him back up, but he's back home. He's back home. So, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, like I said, I like my team. I need to stay healthy like everyone else, and I definitely need Justin Jefferson to stay healthy. I need as many of those big guys to score like him and James Cook for me to kind of compete with some of the top heavy teams. So we'll
Hmm.
see. I like my team. I think it's a top half of the league team, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. We'll move to the next. So this we have 10 minutes left on this one, so we'll break it up into part one and part
Oh, okay.
two.
Okay.
Um, so moving on to Nils's team, I just want to say quick, I actually really like Nils's team.
Hmm.
I think he's definitely one of the stronger teams. I think he could very easily be 2-0. I just want to see week one. Um, so week two, he put up 156. That was obviously the week high, and then
Yep.
82 the first week. But that was when, um, you know, tough week for Metcalf. McBride didn't do
CB.
much. Keenan Allen, yeah, he sat Brian Robinson. So, but I think his starting lineup coming into week three, I think is obviously the best one that he has with Kyler, CD, Metcalf. That offense looks really fun.
Hmm.
ETN, I think they're running the ball a ton in Jacksonville, and then obviously he's got Jordan Mason, who it has been a machine since
Is
he's taken over from CNC. McBride, I think if you don't have Bowers or McBride right now, you're just pretty much in the same boat. I know those are the two like top two locked in tight ends, I think, moving forward. And then Brian
hmm
Robinson has been getting they're running the ball a ton. He's been producing. So I actually really like Knowles' team. He just picked up Alec Pierce, who scored two tutties. Still got AD Mitchell. He's got Najee Harris to round out his running back depth. So um, Yeah, I really like Nils' team. I think kind of moving forward, he's gonna be like in the top half of the league at least if everyone stays healthy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's not really much to add. I mean, you can kind of see it from the rundown you just gave. I mean, then you throw in Jordan Mason. I actually was kind of talking about that with Anth, unfortunately, when we were traveling, just the fact that, now, of course, the news now comes out with CMC, the injury is a little bit more extensive maybe than they anticipated in terms of like the length of the recovery time. And it just sucks because I mean Elijah Mitchell. I mean, good on Nils, obviously, just in terms of just knowing his own team. Elijah Mitchell went on IR, and then he scooped up Mason as like, okay, there's really only one other guy besides CMC, and it ends up absolutely a home run pick for him. I mean, he's going to get him for at least 6 to 8 weeks, maybe the whole season. Who knows?
Yeah.
And in that type of offense, 22 and 17. I mean, hey, geez, for a guy that you had no idea what was going to do, even if he did play. They're running the ball with him. They trust him. I mean, 28 and 20 carries. Jeez, yeah,
Yeah.
they're using him.
And they're in LA this week, so it's just another smash spot for Jordan Mason. So yeah, I really like Nils' team moving forward. I think if we were power ranking the teams, I think Nils would probably be in my top, probably in my top three, top four.
Yeah,
So
great.
we're gonna end the first one
Do this
here.
one. Yep,
Um, and then we'll hop on to record the second half. Probably will be a little bit shorter. I know we'll just probably churn through the rest of the teams pretty quickly.
yep.
But yeah, we'll catch you all on the other side of this. We'll start part two shortly.